So let's move on to the second P, which is price. And we'll talk about some various strategies associated with pricing, particularly the internal and external factors that affect pricing decisions, and some ways that companies will manage price once the price has been established. So let's begin by looking at a couple of key points to do with pricing. First of all, let's remember that it's the exchange value. Consumers are thinking about value in a product, and so what they get in return for their money, and that's usually the price that's set for a product. Secondly, it's the quickest and the easiest of the 4 Ps to manipulate and change. You can easily walk down to the end of a counter and change the price of a product, and as a result, it's often used inappropriately. Sometimes a product may not be selling, and so a company or individual thinks, well, all I need to do is drop the price. And in fact, it may not be the price that's the problem. Maybe it's not promoted very well. Maybe customers have a hard time finding it. The distribution isn't correct. Maybe there are features and benefits that aren't right. And certainly slashing the price may not be the answer. Sometimes it is, but because it's very easy to manipulate, often the price is reduced when it doesn't need to be. The third point is that people often think that consumers want the lowest price, and that's not always the case. Again, it's a question of the quality that you get for the amount of money that you pay. That's the value equation. I mean, there are lots of people that spend money on, luxurious goods and very expensive goods because they want the quality. Not always do people want to spend, the lowest price. So let's begin and talk about price setting, and I've got an example up here of a university student named Bill Ball, who has a summer job, and he's decided to put on some soccer clinics for children in his hometown of Bridgewater. And so the question is, he's sitting here at the beginning of summer thinking, well, how much should I charge for these soccer clinics? What might influence the price for the clinics? So let's look at some of the factors. Well, first of all, the objectives of the organization, what Bill wants to accomplish. He might have a certain target return. He might need $8,000 in order to return to university, and so he wants to price his product so that he's going to generate that level of profit. Or market share. Perhaps he's working with the town of Bridgewater, and they have an objective that they'd like 50% of the children to be involved in some sort of physical activity and being involved in soccer. So he would price his product in order to generate that level of market share. Or perhaps competition. He might price his product to be at the same price of a baseball clinic. Now, it also could be affected by his marketing strategy. Is his target market really serious soccer players, or is it just a bunch of kids, having fun, and it's looked at as a recreational activity? That will determine the price. What is the product? How extensive is it? What's the level of coaching and equipment needed? Again, that level of product, that type of product decision will determine his pricing. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be in public fields, or is he going to have to rent facilities? And does he have to do advertising associated with it, or can he promote it through the local soccer association? All those sort of affect the price because they will be costs that will be associated with his marketing mix, and they'll have to be somehow accounted for in the pricing of the product. The costs itself are key. And so he'd look at the variable costs, that is the costs that change with the different quantities. And so in his particular case, he's got costs for coaches, and that's $500 a week. And so a coach can teach a certain number of children. The more children you have, the more coaches you're going to need, so that's a variable cost. And then you also have to add in the fixed costs, that is those costs that are set no matter what level of output you have. So no matter how many children he has coming to his clinic, he's going to have these costs. They're not going to change, they're fixed. So his advertising costs, for example, $2,000 for a newspaper ad, his cost of equipment and renting a field. He's going to pay $100 for the field, and it doesn't matter whether he's got 300 kids on it or 30 kids. It's still going to be $100 for rentals. So he has to consider both variable and fixed costs. Also, the market demand. Is soccer popular? Are there a lot of students playing it? Is it sort of a big sport in Bridgewater, or is baseball the big sport in Bridgewater? And how much are parents willing to spend for a clinic? So that consumer aspect is really important. Finally, the competition. Direct competitors. Are there soccer leagues or other soccer instruction that's available through the YMCA or some sort of town recreation program? And are there indirect competitors like baseball or other summer activities that kids might do, like day camps or bowling? I mean, if parents have discretionary income, so much money that they want to spend, these other indirect competitors come into play, because they may say, well, you know, if you want to do a day camp, you can do that, but you can't do the soccer clinic. So he has to look at what other activities might compete against his product. I guess this is the final one. What sort of other factors might be in terms of the economic, the level of employment, the level of affluence within that particular town? And are there any government subsidies that might come into play that he could take advantage of? That might reduce his costs. So overall, we can see a number of internal and external factors. Internal factors within his organization, such as the marketing objectives, the marketing mix, the costs, the organizational considerations, the target market that he's going after, and the positioning of the product. On the external side, the nature of the market, the demand, what his competition is doing. Again, indirect and direct competitors. The economic situation, the reseller's needs. Now this would be if you're pricing a product in a channel of distribution, if you have wholesalers or retailers that also would be marking up the product. Any government actions and social concern. So there are a number of internal and external factors that all affect the cost of the product, or the price of the product, excuse me. Now price setting, different companies approach it in different ways, but sort of a really general rule of thumb is to take the costs as a floor, okay, sort of a minimum price. Then you mark up an allowance for the profit, for the target return that the organization wants to achieve, adjust it for any policies that they might have, like meeting competition or being a price leader, something like that. Looking at what consumers are willing to pay, because that's the ultimate factor, and then maybe make an adjustment again for competition. So these are sort of the key factors. But some companies, it's very sophisticated with a lot of pricing models. Other companies, it's much simpler than this. One of the common tools used for pricing is a break-even analysis, where we look at the point where, in fact, we're going to start to make money and be profitable. So in this example, Bill Ball has some fixed expenses, $2,000 for advertising and equipment, and some variable expenses, and that he has one coach for every 10 children, and a coach he has to pay $500 a week. He needs $8,000 cash for next year to pay his university tuition, and parents are willing to spend $100 per child per week. So the question is, how many children does he need to break even? In other words, how many kids have to come to camp before he can actually start earning $1? So what I'd like you to do is pause and work out the calculation. All right, so hopefully you've got the calculation worked out, and let's look at the formula. Okay, it's break even with total fixed costs over selling price minus average variable costs. So let's see if we can plug those in. Now, total fixed costs are the $2,000 that he has for his advertising equipment, plus his target return. That's something that's required. He wants to have that, so we'll put that on top as his fixed costs. And then we'll look at the selling price minus his average variable cost. So his selling price is what parents are willing to spend. That's $100 per child per week. And his variable costs are his coaching costs. So if he has to pay $500 for a coach, and a coach can teach 10 children, so it's going to cost $50 per child. That's the variable cost. The more children he has, the more coaches he's going to need, and that's a variable cost of $50 per child. So on the bottom of the equation, he's got $100 for his revenue per child minus $50 for his average variable cost, and that equals a total of 200 children. So that's what he needs before he can actually sort of break even or make more money than his target objective.